You know what the most frustrating part about changing careers is, in my opinion? It's when you know that you're qualified, but you don't know how to explain why you're qualified in a way that makes sense to somebody in a completely different industry. So I had a client, we'll just call her Amber, this video, who had this exact problem. She worked in pharmacy and then a cosmetics lab and then a state quality testing lab, all science jobs, all compliance heavy jobs, data focused. And she wanted to pivot into insurance as an analyst. So on paper, it was clear that she was qualified, like clear as day. She had the data analysis skills, compliance experience, attention to detail, all the things that she needed to pivot to insurance. But she had no idea, like legit zero ideas how to actually market her transferable skills in a way that showed she was qualified for the insurance analyst role that she wanted. Does this sound familiar? Like you've been considering a career change, you have a pretty good idea of what you want to pivot into, but you're feeling stuck when it comes to actually articulating your skills in a way that makes sense. So whether it is on your resume or in interviews. If that's you, if you're like, yep, that's me, then keep watching because in this video, I'm going to show you the exact framework I use with my career coaching clients to help you make your skills actually relevant when you are changing careers. And this framework doesn't just work for your resume, okay? You're going to use this framework in interviews. You're going to use this framework on your LinkedIn profile, in cover letters, in networking conversations, literally anywhere that you need to market yourself for a job that doesn't obviously match your background, but you know you're qualified for. Let's get into it. If you're new here, hi. And if you are a regular viewer, welcome back. Thank you for being here again. I am Dr. Tega. I'm a career coach who helps professional women leave soul-sucking, draining jobs that they don't like and land higher paying, more fulfilling careers that they can thrive in by helping them clarify their next career move and job search without burning out. Let's get into today's video. Okay, so here's what most people do when they are trying to pivot careers, at least what I see. They will go and look at a job description. They might see something that says data analysis and they think, oh, you know what? I've done data analysis. I'm qualified for this role. And then maybe they go to their resume and write something like experienced in data analysis. Or in an interview, they'll say something like, I'm really good at analyzing data and finding patterns. And the hiring manager is sitting there thinking, okay, but what does that actually mean? What kind of data? How did you analyze the data? What was the outcome of the data analysis? And how does that translate to what you can do in this specific job that I'm trying to fill? Like they can't connect the dots by themselves. And when a hiring manager cannot connect the dots for why you're qualified for this job in 6 seconds of looking at your resume, they will move on to the next candidate. Like you cannot make recruiters or hiring managers guess how you are a fit for a role because they just won't. They won't. They will go to the next candidate that's already clearly a fit. It is your job to make it clear. And that's a reason why you need to be able to help them see that your skills are transferable. And I think why you might struggle to do that is that you're confusing having a skill with knowing how to talk about the skill. And those are two completely different things. Okay. Just because you've done something doesn't mean you know how to explain it in a way that makes somebody else understand why it matters. And this is especially true when you are pivoting into a whole new field or industry because you're not just explaining what you did, you need to translate what you did from one industry's language into another industry's language. So at this point, the question that I want you to be thinking about as somebody who is trying to make a career change or a career pivot is, can I explain my skills in a way that proves my skills are transferable? And fear not, because in this video, I'm going to give you a framework that will help you say unequivocally yes to that question. And it's a very simple framework, very simple. I'm going to call it the 3-question framework. Okay, here's how it works. For every skill that you think is transferable to the job you want, you need to be able to answer 3 questions. Okay, when did you use this skill? Why did it matter to the business or organizations? What was the measurable outcome from using the skill? If you can answer all three of those questions, you have a transferable skill that you can actually market for the job you want. If you cannot answer all three questions, you don't actually know how to talk about that skill yet, and it still needs a little bit of work. So let me break down each of those questions, and I'm going to share examples from using this with the client I mentioned at the beginning of this video. We're calling my client Amber. I'll walk you through an example so you can see the whole thing, okay? So question one is, when did you use this skill? This isn't really about listing every single time you use the skill. It's about giving a specific concrete example that proves that you have used the skill to complete a task successfully. So when I think about the client I mentioned, when we were working together to build out her resume, we noticed that data analysis was a critical skill for the insurance job that she was trying to translate into. And we knew that she had used data analysis in previous roles, but just saying data analysis or data analysis skill isn't good enough because anybody can say that. And when anybody can say something, then you don't stand out. So in her case, instead of just saying experienced in data analysis or even competent in data analysis, we said on her resume that she had analyzed water quality data at the state water department. By tying the skill to a specific circumstance, which in this case was analyzing water quality data, it shows the context in which the skill was used, and it allows you to actually stand out. This is super important because when you are pivoting, specificity is what is going to make you memorable from all the other candidates, especially candidates who may on paper look like they have directly relevant experience, because you can be sure that the hiring manager is talking to 5 other people in interviews who are saying generic things like, I'm good at problem solving, or I'm a strong communicator. Or if we stick with this example that I'm using for my client, I have experience analyzing data. And if 5 people say the exact same thing, I've analyzed data, they all blur together in the hiring manager's mind at some point. But when you're the only one who says, I analyzed water quality data to identify bacterial contamination patterns, they're going to sit up. They're going to remember that. They're going to get curious because it is specific, it is memorable, and it makes you sound more credible because you're sharing the specific context in which you used the skill that you're trying to sell. Then we have question 2. Why did it matter to the business? The first step is where most people stop. They can tell you what they did, but they don't tell you why it mattered. And answering this question is what moves you from looking, again, like someone who just does a task and checks things off the list to someone who is actually having an impact and making a difference. So sticking with my client's example, she tested water samples in that job. Okay. Why did that matter? Well, if bacteria levels were too high, that meant E. coli could get into the drinking water for like 50,000 people. And that means that people could get sick, which means that people could sue the state, which means that the city would then lose millions of dollars, right? That is why the skill mattered. So now, instead of just saying I analyzed data and tested water samples, we can say, add on to it, I analyzed data and tested water samples to prevent bacteria outbreaks that could affect 50,000 residents and cost the city millions in lawsuits. Do you see how that changes everything? By answering why it matters, you're not just stating tasks, you are driving outcomes, which in the case of this example, the outcomes were preventing harm, protecting people, and saving money. And guess what insurance companies care about? All 3 of those things. So now the water testing experience isn't just science work. We have positioned it as risk prevention, compliance, and financial impact, all things that translate directly to insurance. One thing I want you to notice from that example is, so Amber actually told me that she was preventing E. coli outbreaks. But in the example that I shared with you, or in the marketing statement, we changed it to bacteria outbreaks because E. coli is very specific to her science background. And when we are talking to somebody in insurance or who's not in science, we don't want to get too technical with the language we're using. So could they know what E. coli is? Yes, absolutely. But their brain now has to translate it while interviewing you. Meanwhile, we all know what bacteria is. Like that is common lingo that immediately your brain knows bacteria are bad. So in marketing yourself, we're also ensuring that we're taking language that is too technical or too specific to your former industry and using language that would make sense for the industry you're trying to transfer your skills to. And finally, question 3 is, what was the measurable outcome? This is where you quantify your contribution. Numbers are powerful for marketing your skills because numbers make your impact real. So in Amber's case, the outcome was that she maintained a 100% compliance record across 500 plus quality control tests over 2 years. That is measurable. Measurable helps her sound more credible. And when you put all 3 of those questions together, here's what a marketing statement might sound like. I analyzed water quality data to prevent bacteria outbreaks that could affect 50,000 residents, and I maintained a 100% compliance record across 500 plus quality control tests over 2 years. That is a transferable skill that proves that you can do compliance work, handle high stakes data analysis, and that you care about preventing harm and protecting people. And that is exactly what an insurance analyst does. Now, I want to take a second to talk about something that I call the specificity principle, because this is the thing that makes this framework actually work and stand out for you as a career changer. So the specificity principle is essentially concrete examples are credible and memorable. Vague claims are forgettable. So when you are talking about any skill or any task that you know is the thing that makes you qualified for what you're trying to do, you have to be specific. Don't use vague examples. Don't speak in generalities. Because like I said earlier, everybody else is speaking in the exact same vague generalities because they have seen those words on the job description just like you have. If anybody else can copy and paste what is in your resume or repeat what you have said and it will make sense for them, you're being too vague. When you are marketing your transferable skills, you have to talk about it in a way that is very specifically your experience and your experience alone. So when Amber first told me that she was good at data analysis, that was vague. Like that could mean literally anything. That doesn't stick in my brain. But after asking her some of those clarifying questions that I've shared with you, we were then able to come up with tested bacteria levels to prevent customer deaths and lawsuits. That is so much more specific and credible. And with doing this, you don't need to exaggerate or make your work sound more impressive than it actually is. That's not the purpose of this principle. You just need to be specific about what you actually did and why it actually mattered. And that specificity is what is going to help you stand out. Now, before I talk about looking for patterns and where exactly to use these kinds of statements in your pivot process, if you're finding this video helpful so far, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons below because that ensures that YouTube shares this video with more people who need to see this message. And you will never miss future videos from me that will continue to help you grow in your career. And candidly, it does help this channel grow. Thank you. Also, if you are struggling to even identify which of your skills actually transfer to your target role, I created a resource called the Peaceful Pivot Guide that walks you through identifying and marketing your transferable skills. It has tools like my Map Your Skills framework and the Transferable Skills Translator that will all help you quickly identify and position your transferable skills. You can see the link in the description below to learn more about that guide. Okay, so one more thing I want to show you with this framework is how to use it to find patterns across your jobs. So if we go back to my client's example, when we were looking across her history, I noticed that she had been doing compliance across 3 of her previous roles. So at the pharmacy, at the State Department, and in a cosmetics lab, she had done compliance testing in some way, shape, or form. Even though it wasn't her primary responsibilities, she had done it across all those roles. So when you look at your work history and see a skill set showing up in multiple different contexts, that is a transferable skill. And it's potentially something you're actually good at. And if you happen to also enjoy using that skill, because that is key, then it's something that you might want to lean into when you are positioning yourself for a new role in a new field. So as you are going through this 3-question framework for your own skills, I want you to pay attention to the patterns, right? What skills keep showing up? What responsibilities did you have in multiple roles? What strengths do you keep relying on no matter where you work? That will help you surface any transferable skills that maybe you've forgotten about or hadn't thought to market. Now, here's why this framework is so powerful. It doesn't just work for one thing. You are going to use this framework as you are making your pivot everywhere. So on your resume, this is how you write your bullet points. So instead of just listing the tasks that you've done, you are showing your impact using the 3-question framework. In interviews, when they ask you behavioral questions like, tell me about a time when you solved a complex problem, you can use the 3-question framework to structure your answer. When did you do the thing? Why did it matter? And what was the outcome? On LinkedIn, when you are writing your about section or your experience descriptions, you can use this same framework to show your value. And in cover letters, when you are explaining why you're qualified, even though you're coming from like a totally different background or a different industry, you can use this same framework to connect your past experiences to their needs. And one more, actually, in networking conversations, this is a big one. When someone is asking you, what do you want to do? Or how can they help you? Or why are you interested in their company? You can use this same framework to explain your background in a way that makes sense. So you do this work once to really map out your skills, and then you will use it everywhere else on your pivot journey. And then just in case you haven't picked up on this from the video so far, I think it's important to say that for this to work, it is so important that you already know what job you're targeting. So I'm not sharing this framework as a way to figure out what you should do next in your career. Okay. I have other videos about that. That is what I do with my coaching clients. That is why you can use the Peaceful Pivot Guide to help you get clarity on what else you can do. This framework is specifically for when you already know what job you want to move into, but what you're really struggling with is how to talk about your skills in a way that sounds transferable, in a way that makes sense for that job. Okay. All right. So if you're watching this video, chances are you are likely in the middle of a career pivot right now, or maybe you are thinking of a career change or a career pivot, and you're realizing that figuring out your transferable skills is legit just one piece of the puzzle. Because once you know how to talk about your transferable skills, you still need to write a resume that positions you correctly. You need to know how to handle interviews when you are coming from a completely different background. When you're making a change, you need to make sure you're not picking a job that you will hate in 6 months just because you're qualified for it. Okay. And that is exactly why I built the Peaceful Pivot Guide. This is the guide that really helps you navigate your pivot by walking through my 5-step CLARE framework, which is the exact same system I actually use with my coaching clients. You get my Map Your Skills tool that helps you identify your transferable skills faster and map them to the job. You can use the Transferable Skills Translator to show you how to position those skills for different industries. There are AI tools and AI prompts in there to help you build your resume, navigate the interview, figure out what role is right for you. You literally get a process to help you make your career change so you can land a job you love, not just a job you can tolerate. It's an entirely self-paced resource, and it was designed specifically for professionals who are pivoting careers and are really looking for a clear and strategic tool or resource to help you make that pivot without quitting or ending up miserable like the way you started. So if that sounds like you can go to pivotwithpeace.com to grab your copy today, or you can just click that link in the description of this video below. I hope you found this video helpful for figuring out how to make your skills sound more transferable. And if it was helpful, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And once you hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons below, that way you know when future videos get dropped, don't click away, because guess what? Watch this. There's another video popping up on the screen right here. Click that video. I bet you haven't watched that video yet. Watch that video so that I can continue supporting you in your career.